Dear Lord, we thank you for the many things you've done for us in our lives and the things you will continue to do in our lives. Help us, Lord, with each breath that we have to give honor and glory to you. Bless us this Sabbath day. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, I don't know about you. It's been a hard week, and I'm actually grateful it's Sabbath so that I can actually breathe and take a rest. Um, so today, actually, it was about 7 years back. I did a series on financial management. It was over 7 years ago, and recently, you know, some of the members have been requesting, can we do a little bit more on finance? And so what I propose to do is I'm going to go over that material again, but kind of update it because we have new audience, and also things have kind of moved on, over the 7 years. So it's interactive. So please, if you have questions, please ask them as we go along, and let's try and do things. What I will do is I will try. So we'll do this series. So every time I present, I'll continue with it, and then on what I will be doing over the coming months is I'll be doing another series, but kind of like non-Sabbath material. So I'll do that as and when, and then we'll put that onto the ministry channel. So I won't present those on Sabbath. So we'll try and keep it a little bit more spiritual. But however, if you've got practical questions, then please ask away. Right. So my thoughts then are going to come from the book Adventist Home. So I don't know if anyone's ever read this book. We're on this section 13, the use of money. I do have a PDF copy of it, so if anyone wants a copy of it, I'll see if I can put it onto the forum. But yeah, let's make a start. The use of money. So chapter 60 talks about stewards of God, and Emma was sharing how Elder Paminder's been doing a series, and the secrets of not really secret, but how to be successful. And one of them is really about finances, and I think we need to just keep reminding us how we can be all of us good stewards. Right. We what I'll do, I'll read. It's probably easy if I just read, and then any thoughts or any questions, please just stick your hand up, and we'll try and answer them. We are to recognize God's ownership. And I think that's important. Um, every time I spend money, every time I lose money, every time I waste money, I'm always thinking, gosh, have I been a good steward? So we must always recognize that everything that we have is not our own, but is of God's. And God just lends us everything to us. That which lies at the foundation of business integrity and of true success is the recognition of God's ownership. The creator of all things, he is the original proprietor. We are his stewards. All that we have is a trust from him, to be used according to his direction. Just for the sake of just continuity and clarity, I'm just going to just read it. But when it's him, his, we know it's reference to God. One thing I would say as well, each of us in whichever station in life we find ourselves, in our workplaces, when I go to work, I pray, that God will be with me, in this day, in the work that I do, so that I can be a blessing to those around me, that can be a blessing to my employers. And I believe this was one of the secrets that Daniel had. So when Daniel, purpose in his heart that he'll be faithful to God and do everything for him, God was able to bless him and bless those that he worked for. And because of that, God got the glory and Daniel will get promoted. The same thing happened with Joseph. When Joseph was thrown into, actually before he was thrown into prison, when he was a slave, he got promoted because of um, the blessings that he was able to bring upon his owners, Potiphar. And even when then he was thrown in jail, even the prison authorities recognized his talents and promoted him also. So I think it's important that if we put God first, whatever we do, I believe that God will bless us to bless others. This is an obligation that rests upon every human being. It has to do with the whole sphere of human activity. Whether we recognize it or not, we are stewards, supplied from God with talents and facilities, and placed in the world to do a work appointed by Him. Money is not ours. Houses and grounds, pictures and furniture, garments and luxuries do not belong to us. We are pilgrims. We are strangers. We have only a grant of those things that are necessary for health and life. Our temporal blessings are given us in trust to prove whether we can be entrusted with eternal riches. If we endure the proving of God, then we shall receive that purchased possession, which is to be our own glory, honor, and immortality. So, let me ask a question. If all the wealth, the money, or lack of wealth that we have, or money that we have, it's not ours, it's God's, um, how best can we put that to use? So, for example, is it okay to go on holiday? Is it okay to eat out? Is it okay to buy lots of takeaways? Anyone like to share the thoughts? That's a tricky question, isn't it? It's not a trap. It's really for us just to think about.
I would say no for the
Okay.
holiday,
Okay.
unless you purpose to meet people and share heaven's message or the principles of heaven's message. But that's definitely a no.
Okay. Anyone else like to give their thoughts?
Yeah, I would like to say exactly the opposite of what was just said. God has made us stewards of whatever He has given us. It's up to me to decide what I want to do with it. If I want to buy takeout, that's up to me. That's not up to God. God has given me that authority over that, what He has given me. And if it messes me up, that's my problem. You get what I'm saying? At the end of the day, it's going to be me and what I have done. So, yeah, I believe that God has given us the brains, everything to use for our own good. If we use it for our own bad, that's our problem.
Thank you, Brian. But Brian, I've missed you, by the way. I've missed you. Okay, I'm glad you're here. I've missed your voice. I missed everyone else as well, by the way, but I haven't seen Brian for a while, so I miss him. So don't feel like I don't miss anyone else to do. Yasin, yeah, always glad to hear you.
Happy Sabbath, man.
You too.
Yes. So my mind quickly went back to Genesis chapter 2, I think, when humanity was created. And I'm trying to extract a principle from there. So when human beings were created, God communicated to them that everything that I have made is for you, it's for your benefit. To use a colloquial term, knock yourselves out, you know. But there's only one thing that I require you to consider. Do this. So in that case, it was don't eat of that forbidden fruit. And I would like to think that that's how God deals with us in everything that has to do with property ownership, what we want to do. we are given a lot of leeway, a lot of room to pursue happiness. So if going on holiday makes me happy, I don't think God would be opposed to that. If going out for dinner with my loved ones makes me happy, I don't believe God would be opposed to that. So whatever relationship we have with God and whatever requirements that God has for us, I don't think those requirements are restrictive on basically on many things that we can do. They're reasonable restrictions, if I can say. Just like, all these fruits you can eat, but just not this one. So those are my.
Yeah, I'm more towards what Blessing and Brian has said. Key thing though I would underline is everything we do, naturally we give it, to the glory of God, but we should do it within our means. So if low wage earner, and I can't afford, you know, let's say an international holiday, then that's not to say we shouldn't have a holiday. It's, well, let's find a holiday that we can do, within our affordability. So maybe more local, more camping or a campsite. I know lots of families, or I knew lots of conservative families, they would camp all the time. They enjoyed it as a family, because they can go on holiday as a family and actually do it on a more affordable basis. So first principle, really, I would say is work within your affordability. If you can afford to go on holiday, I don't think there's anything wrong, with going on holiday. So I don't want anyone to feel necessarily guilty if they go on holiday. If you can afford it, fine. We all need holidays. We all need family time, and the same with eating out and food. And I think uh, Blessing brought the point about happiness. When I reflect, as now I'm a parent myself, um, it's I spend probably too much time, a lot of time reflecting on when I was growing up, when I was young, and how my parents would parent me and the things that we do, and I look back and can relate to many happy memories, with my parents, my family, where when we eat out, when we do family things together, when we go on holiday together. I can remember nearly all our holidays that we went together, and at that time, probably most of the restaurants we went to, because they were kind of far and few between when we used to go. So I think creating memories with our families is important, and if we don't get translated, any of us, and we should depart, um what memories will people have of us? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it happy, miserable? And I think it's important, that in the lives that we live today, that we try and give a more positive legacy, and positive memories to those around us, our loved ones. So yeah, we are, and I think the way Brian put it, we are stewards of what God has given us, and if we misuse that, then that's on us. That's our accountability to God.
Elder Manjit,
Yes, Richard.
can I just make? We've just had a recent camp meeting where an elder said where all when there's camp meetings and it
Yes,
is in people's ability to attend, because obviously finances do come into it, and people have chose not to but have a holiday, that's a bad
yes,
choice. So I'd just like to add that. So
sure, yeah,
all those who
yeah,
have had personal holidays
yeah,
and sacrificed camp meetings have made bad choices, um, because the blessings in the camp meeting, not in the holiday. So I'd just like to just add that to what I said in case it wasn't understood properly.
sure. No, it's okay, Richard. Yeah, I think that's I think what Elder Pender was suggesting is that um not to have, it's not to have holidays, but don't not go to camp meetings, but go on holiday instead. I think, do the camp meetings and then go on holiday. I think it's the emphasis on priority. If you can't afford to go to camp meeting, but you can afford to go on holiday, then I think the suggestion is, well, why not go to camp meeting as your as your holiday. Okay. Also, I want everyone, in our discussions to be able to, speak freely, and not to be judged. So let's be merciful upon one another, and just because maybe someone does go on holiday, let's not condemn them for going on holiday or eating out, things like that. But this is for all of us to grow. We must give an account. If our own people would only put into the cause of God the money that has been lent them in trust, that portion which they spend in selfish gratification, in idolatry, they would lay up treasure in heaven and will be doing the very work God requires them to do. But like the rich man in the parable, they live sumptuously. The money God has lent them in trust to be used to his name's glory, they spend extravagantly. They do not stop to consider their accountability to God. They do not stop to consider that there is to be a reckoning day not far hence, when they must give an account for their stewardship. We should ever remember that in the judgment we must meet the record of the way we use God's money. Much is spent in self-pleasing, self-gratification. That does us no real good, but positive injury. If we realize that God is the giver of all good things, that the money is his, then we shall exercise wisdom in its expenditure, conforming to his will, to his holy will. The world, its customs, its fashions will not be our standard. We shall not have a desire to conform to its practices. We shall not permit to our own inclinations to control us. Blessing. See your hand.
It's charity, actually.
Charity, even better. Just as good. I quickly
Okay,
changed that.
so as you were reading, I was just asking myself what it means that the money that we have belongs to God, and I just want to understand what that means exactly. That it's not our own, it's God's. I don't know if anyone can help with it.
Just adding to the question before you answer. Normally, when someone buys you a gift or gives you something, there's a transfer of ownership. It's yours now. They're not going to come back tomorrow and say,
It's mine.
I'm the one that gave you that phone or that iPad or that thing. Give it back to me. So I don't think parents even do that with their children. If they buy them a phone, they don't say, that's my phone. It's child's phone. So just adding to the question.
I do. I get into trouble.
Bad parent.
You know what? Parenting is the worst. The hardest job in the world. And it's
No,
difficult
no,
for me
no,
as a
I'm
parent.
joking. I'm joking.
No,
Sorry.
no, it's difficult. It's like, for example, we got, so we got Asher a phone and a laptop, but I'll put constraints on it. For example, so you can't use it this time, or you can't do these things, or if you don't do your chores, I'm gonna hold off on the internet. And he always complains that, well, you gave it to me as my laptop. Why are you controlling it? You can't give a gift and say, well, actually it's only half gift, I'm going to take half of it back. And there's validity to his point, which obviously, as a I struggle as a parent, because on one hand, I want to have leverage to make sure that we've got boundaries and discipline. But on the other hand, he's right. If I give him something, it's his. It's not for me to take back. And I think, does anyone actually want to respond to Charity's question? What is it?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go on, Brian.
Um, I think the rest of that passage that you read puts it more into context that God doesn't like the abuse of anything. And in this case, we're talking about money. And it gives Sister White is talking an example of the rich man. Now, a rich person, obviously, you'd expect as a human being, well, maybe I'm just talking from my own point of view. If I was a rich man, I would definitely take care of the needy that I know of and share lots and lots with people that are needy. But if you are greedy, on the other hand, and you keep this all to yourself and you spend it lavishly on yourself, yeah, there is a problem. God sees a problem that this is a very selfish person. With what I've given them, they have abused it and they have spent it very recklessly on themselves. You know, that is not my character. They are not showing my character. So, yes, there is a problem there. But on the other hand, if you are willing to share what God has given you, God says that's a good side of the person, of what I've imparted to human beings, and they're showing it, and that's what God wants, for His character to be reflected in all of us, in everything that is about us. So yeah, uh, Charity's question was, I'm just drifting. Sorry. What Charity asked?
Charity, I'll just clarify your question again.
Okay, so I was saying, the passage is speaking a lot more about how the money that we have is not ours, it's God's,
Ah,
right?
okay.
Yes, and what does that mean that this is God's money? Because how I feel personally, if I'm told that, like for example, the house that I live is not mine, I'm renting it. So I always live with that fear that okay, I don't want to mess it up, you know. So and I always have that feeling at the back of my mind or that thought that it's not mine, right? But in this case, I'm just wondering what that means. Is it the same or, it's different?
Yeah.
Hi, Manjit. Brian, sorry, had you finished?
Yeah. Okay. Carry on, Rose. Carry on.
No, I don't have an answer for Cherity's question, but I don't want us to. I want to answer on what Blessing said because I'm a parent, and I just wanted to say the thought before I forget it. So I think if we take the parable of God being the parent and us being children, I think where we are required to be in that parable is we are mature adult children. Okay. Um, but if you compare it to uh, me as a parent and Nathaniel Nicholas as a child, I think Nathaniel and Nicholas have still many things to learn, and maturity wise, they also need to grow. So, in as much as I might give Nathaniel a blessing of an iPad, but the moment Nathaniel begins to abuse that iPad, not for his benefit, or I ought to step in and, offer restriction, like to even withdraw the gift because Nathaniel is not mature. But what God wants for you and me is we should have stepped higher, even with our prayer life, we should have stepped higher. Uh, you, the call as always is that's coming is we need to step higher and, sit down as adults now and reason together. So I just wanted to mention that in as much as we give our children gifts, you know, I can still oversee and see is this harmful or not. But if I give you a gift blessing, a birthday gift, maybe I give you money. I said blessing. Oh, it was your birthday. Here is £50. I'm I'm if I'm me, I would not ask, oh, blessing, what did you do? So I was avoiding to say if I'm a normal person, but I don't want to say that. So if it's me, I wouldn't then ask, oh, blessing, what did you do with your £50? Because I gave you. And you know what you wanted, so you probably got what you wanted. But then, if I give Nathaniel 50 pounds, I'll need to, know what have you been doing with that 50 pounds, because he could be out there buying drugs for his friends and all. I need to know, oh, so what did you do? You know, I don't know if it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, Andreas, I see your hand. I'll just take this point first. Is as a parent, it's difficult because like when we go see um ushers and say that's grandparents, they'll give them like £10 or £20, and you know, and when they go to spend it, I say, hey, don't do that, and they say, well, it's my money, it's my gift, Dad, don't get involved, and it's difficult. It really is difficult as a parent because on the one hand, you see your children, spending recklessly or wasting money, but on the other hand, it's their money. It's given to them to do as they want to, and it's always that kind of that's I think maybe for later discussion how we do it as parents. Andreas.
Hello, Manjit. So yeah, so I think Charity's question triggered me thinking about it, and I'm not sure if it's the answer, but I'm here thinking that if we go back to the example that Blessing gave about the garden and God giving Adam and Eve the garden, um, you know, you can do anything you want with it except for one prohibition. And then when they did that prohibited thing, then they were kicked out of the garden. So they were removed from there. So it seems to me that the ownership perhaps was kind of more like, okay, you own this, you really do. Except that if you do the prohibited thing, you're not gonna own it anymore. So something like a contract like that. I don't know if that makes sense.
Blessing, do you want to respond?
No, it's
You got your hand
Charity.
up. Oh, sorry, Charity.
Can
Yeah,
I say a few words after Charity?
yeah.
Is it just written blessing?
No, well,
It's written blessing charity, but obviously when the hands up, I don't know if it's a blessing or it's a charity. So
Oh, okay, okay. All right, that's fine.
okay.
Okay, I didn't understand what Andreas was saying, but I just wanted to understand the context in which Ellen White is speaking in this sense. Maybe that could help as well to understand what she means that the money is not our own, because from what you all have been talking about, I know I don't have a child and I'll probably not understand it as much as you do, like the experience that you have, and the dilemma that is there when you're giving a child something, and then you also have to make sure they're safe, so because in my mind, when I think about it, when you give someone something, because I think I've had an experience before where I've given Blessing something and then I've expected him to, you know, do with it in a certain way. I want him to, if it's something that needs to be worn, I'm asking, why you're not wearing it? Or, aren't you supposed to do it this way or whatever? And then until you told me one day, did you actually give me this as mine? Or, you still have control over it. And then I guess I got the point that if you have given someone something and you know that it's theirs, you don't have control over it. Once you have given it to them, they have to make the decision on how they're going to use that money, for example. Right? And I am just also wondering at the same time that when God is also giving us, in quotes, the money and all the things that we have, are they ours or they're not? If you get what I'm saying. And what does it mean that this is God's money?
I think it means exactly that. It's like, is your life your own? right? So if we go towards our life, and it isn't it? We are here because of God. And I think really what God does, God gives us means. He gives us the ability to get means as well. Many of us have to work, and I guess it's what he's saying. We're stewards. Now, on another level, when we talk about tithes, it'll say, look, 10% is mine, all right, and 90% is yours. And I think in this accountability and this stewardship, God does give us a lot of leeways. He's not a tyrant. He says, okay, the money I've given is yours. Do the best with it. Be good stewards with it, because that's part of our character, part of our test, I guess, in how we use and deal with the resources that God gives us. But when he talks about extravagance, we're getting to the area where it's kind of very, very kind of difficult to pin down, because if I was a multimillionaire, if I was a multimillionaire and I went on business class or first class ticket when I'm traveling, is that extravagance? Or if I had my own jet, is that extravagance? It might be, it might not be, if I'm a multimillionaire. But if I'm just a normal person, I'm flying business class all the time, at great expense, then that may be extravagance, especially if it's at the expense of other important things. So I think for each of us, it kind of is good for us to kind of, in our own finances, in our own lives, to actually reflect the things that we are doing. Is it extravagant? Is it beyond our means? Is it beyond our account? Are we spending money on things which is stopping us from doing things for God? I think that's one way to measure it. Does that help?
Well, not really. I guess the dilemma I'm having is this: like, if we look at the parable that we have of a parent and a child, right?
Yeah.
Of course, the child knows that they couldn't come into this world without the parent, and I mean, they are solely dependent upon the parents. Their life is from them, right? But once they also come into this world, we have to juggle the idea or the concept that they are an autonomous human being,
Okay.
right? Who is able to make choices and decisions. And part of what parents have to learn to do is to look at that person as they're growing as as an autonomous being, right? Who is going to make their own life choices, and they can't always have control over everything, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So
So
in the same way, when we are looking at us with God, we know
yeah.
that we couldn't be in this world without God. And God created everything, right? All the resources that we have in the world that we use to survive and all. But at the same time, we are also creating a lot more things, and we are putting in effort to earn, whether it's the money or the goods that we have. And like, which aspect are we identifying as God being the owner of what we have? If you get what I'm saying.
Well, everything you have is God's, right? Everything you have is God's. But God says, you know what? In in the fact that everything I have given you, I'm also going to give you, and use the word autonomy. I'm going to give you autonomy and responsibility to use, or actually to use 90% of it, within your own judgment. 10% is non-negotiable, and 90% of what he gives you, he's saying, okay, you know what? I'm going to give you some freedoms to use that money, to use that wealth, to use that resources, and when life's finished, you're going to give an account for what you've done with it, good or bad. Does that help?
Elder Manjit.
It's okay, we can continue. I think I'll try and think a little bit more, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, because I'm trying to understand what you're saying, and I'm not 100% sure what your I don't use the word stressed about, right, or concerned about. But I think it's just, and I think actually Brian said it earlier in a very succinct way that, we're given resources, and at the end of our life, at the end of the day, we're going to give an account for it. And if we've done well, God will say you've done well, and if we haven't done well, we haven't done well. And I think God is not absolute in uh what we do with our wealth, what we do with our money. But I think the overriding principle of everything is it within the means that you have? I think that's the important principle. Go on, Blessing.
No, actually, I wanted to speak, but I wanted to speak after Richard because Richard had wanted to say something.
Richard wanted to speak, yeah. Okay, so Richard, go ahead.
I did want to mention something, but as the conversation developed, it's really going to be intricate to just say the basicness that I was going to say. But what I was going to say is God claimed ownership of money, so it's holy. And we're on fallen earth where there's a lot of unholy things. So if I'm using holy money to buy, and it's especially holy when it's consecrated through tithe, but if I'm buying a bottle of whiskey and God says that's not good for me, or I'm building up the gamer world, which is an empire against the principles of heaven's principles, it's accountability, and it's very difficult with families because children need grace to have power over evil, and parents are accountable for the means that comes through their hands that they're passing on to their children. So there's all these levels of intricacy, but we're supposed to be building up a everlasting kingdom with the means that come through our hands.
Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, it goes without saying, but I think it's important just to put it on record that, what Richard, in that aspect, yeah, we don't want to be using our money buying whiskey, drugs, or things that are going to be harmful to us.
But the way this life is orchestrated, money that's God that's holy is going to get into the hands of people that are not holy, even if you buy something good or need it.
But that's the way the world is. There's
Yes.
nothing, God says, you're in the world, be not of the world. So in other words, if I go to a shopkeeper or a grocery store, right, and they're selling whiskey, alcohol, even if they're selling, drugs, I still need to do my grocery shopping. I still need, buy my things there, and I'm making that person more wealthy. I'm not going to stop buying from there because my money's going into kind of to reward him, because I still got to do what I need to do. Now, if I've got a choice of two shops, one I know is a drug dealer, one I know it isn't, I'm going to go support the one that isn't, as far as I can. So in this world, money circulates, and if we know that we can halt some money going to some wicked person somehow, sure, we do what we can do, but money's always going to end up in bad people's hands from our money. That's just the way the world is now. I'm going to let Marshall speak, then Andres, I'm going to come back to you, Blessing. All right, so I've not forgotten about you. Marshall, go ahead.
Okay. I had a different thought. I hope it'll make sense. Wait. If we think of a different parable, like considering the words stewards and what was the other one? We are lent. I then thought of caretakership, because stewardship is caretakership. So I wanted us to think of a different model. For example, if someone's a shareholder or an investor, they can be like the master. If we look at the model of the master and the servant, so the master is going to give you a certain amount of money, and then you as the CEO or chairman of that organization have to use the resources you have to in a diligent and careful manner, because at the end of the day, the the master wants the money back, or wants profit, or how can I put it, a dividend. Yeah. So it's up to you as the CEO to spend, to use the resources wisely, so that the owner, at the end, gets something, and you get a bonus, because the bonus here is, what did Illinois say? Like eternal life and the other, the three things she mentioned. Sorry. So I was thinking from a business perspective of that model, from the parable of master servant. You're being given these resources, use them wisely as a caretaker. At the end, your bonus as CEO is, sorry, I don't remember, but I hope we can see that. So I was thinking maybe a different parable would help, to explain it. Not to say the others can't, but those are my thoughts.
Okay. Andreas.
Yeah, so I think I just have two questions. I really do see the tension that Charity is pointing out. I think between being owners of something and being stewards. Um, so my question, I think, would be initially, what is the purpose of the money that God gives us, and can we use it for different purposes than the ones they intended to? I think those would be my questions.
Sure. Okay. So, all right, that's a question for everyone. Was that a question directly for me?
For everyone.
Okay.
So, Elder Manjit, can I say what I wanted to say before moving on to this new
Yeah.
question?
Okay. Go on,
Well,
blessing.
I know it's
I'll
not
allow it.
completely new, but it's kind of like different thought. Could I ask you to scroll up again to the passage that you had been reading? The one, yeah, that's the one. So I wanted to start by saying I think it's my fault because I'm the one that brought in the parent-child relationship parable. That passage does not address parent-child, addresses lender and borrower. I think that's the
Yes.
model that's being used. So obviously, in a lender-borrower situation, the money is not yours. The bank loans you money. You can't say that money is mine. It's the bank's money. But of course, you can use that money to get whatever you want to get, and whatever you get becomes yours, and you have to pay it back. That being said, I just wanted to clarify the point I was making with the parent-child relationship, which is that in the parent-child relationship, when you give something to your child, yes, you might have the dilemma of I want to keep them safe, I want to stop them from abusing it, but the point is, it's there. That's the only point I was making. That when you give your child a phone or you give them an iPad, even if you feel like they are going on forbidden sites, the iPad is there. There's the struggle of how do I keep them out of trouble? No problem. But the thing is still there. You're not going to say it's not yours. It's lent to you. I think that's the only point I was making about parent-child relationship. That if you give someone a gift, there's a transfer of ownership, becomes theirs. But in this particular one, it's referring to God as a lender and us as borrowers, which is not a problem. But I guess my question is, no, in normal lender borrower situations, the lender actually expects money back. Like the bank wants its money back with interest even. But I think we would all agree that God doesn't want money, doesn't need money. It doesn't actually need the money that we have because it doesn't benefit them in any way. Last thing I wanted to say is the relationship of God to humans as that of a government, for me, seems to make sense with respect to the issue of our financial management. Like we get money, but we have to give away money. like the tax system. You know, when you work for money, the government takes taxes, and those taxes are not, they're not for the government. Like, it's not necessarily to benefit um, the government, whatever you call the government, but it's for public good. So whether it's the maintenance of public services, provision of public services, the payment of civil servants who offer public services, but really it's for your benefit, even though the government's taking it away from you and is making sure that they use it for what it's supposed to be used for. It's for your benefit. So I see it in that way. But I still have a struggle with this lender borrower model. You know, what does God get from it? Because they don't really need the money.
Elder Manjit, can I
Go ahead.
respond? Can I respond
Yeah,
to
I
that
see
really
you, hand,
quick?
Brian. We'll come back to you. Go ahead.
So what I was thinking is that in reality, this is not necessarily, I think, a lender-borrower model. It's like this. It's more like an employer-employee model, um, where like for example, if you work for a company and they tell you, like, okay, you're gonna go on this trip, and this is the budget that you have. Um, Now, when you go there, you go with a purpose and like go meet clients or whatever. So you don't have to pay that back. You just have to um, fulfill the purpose of what that money was for. I just want to say that.
Yeah, I think that's a good model. I think that and also another way to look at it is investor models as well, or stakeholder. You know, God is a stakeholder in us, and He gives us resources. But the model of employing, I always see myself. I work for God, and I'm lent out to companies when I'm working for those companies. I think it's money God gives us that He's not saying you give it back. It's not like say it's not like a bank. But there is the 10% He asks for back. He says, okay, I'll give you this money, just give me 10% back, and then the 90%, is yours. Brian.
Yeah, I just want to get back slightly on the children parent thing
Okay.
to make a point that with children and adults it's different. When you give your child something, you are their guardian first and foremost. So you are trying to educate them till the stage where they are able to have full control for whatever they do. Because at this stage where they're still a child, whatever they do has repercussions not only on themselves, but on you as their guardian. So, whereas with adults, when you give adults something, it's theirs, the repercussions are on them. But even, you know, still, even in that situation, I'll give an example. In my life, I've always had this where I have siblings or relatives, other relatives and friends that look to you, to help them out whenever they're in trouble. And you can see trouble coming from a mile, let's say from one of your siblings, that what they're doing is going to be a problem very soon. And it's not just a problem for them, that problem is going to be bounced onto me. So you have to step in before it happens and cut it and try and, make the person see sense of what they're doing. So I look at it like God looks at us, all humans, in that aspect, in the same way that, look, I've given you all these resources, I've given you the faculties, everything you need to live, but I'm still there to watch and try and help you with any decisions that you make. And I don't know for sure if God intervenes, in all the stuff that we do on earth, because there's that can be a topic for another another
Another,
day.
another time.
Does God intervene? But I'd like to look at it from the aspect that I've just said, between parent and child and you and the rest of the world. Yeah, you still have a part to play, even if you do give someone something.
And I think even when when God sees us, that are we doing good with what He's given us, then He gives more. It's like with the talents, isn't it? The 1, the 5, and the 10 talents. The better the steward you are, the more He can entrust with you. But I think God does give us a lot of leeway. Let me just finish this paragraph first. Blessing or charity, and then I'll see your hand. In our use of money, we can make it an agent of spiritual improvement by regarding it as a sacred trust, not to be employed to administer to pride, vanity, appetite, or passion. So I think again, this is with the wealth and money that we have, how are we best using it? And that's really not for me to dictate or tell you what to do with it, but for each of us to reflect with the money that we have. Are we administering to pride, vanity, appetite, and passion? I was shown that the recording angels makes a faithful record of every offering dedicated to God and put into the treasury, and also of the final result of the means thus bestowed. And the eye of God takes cognizance of every farthing devoted to his cause, and of the willingness or reluctance of the giver. The motive is given is also chronicled. I just want to bring this point in, and then I'll Blessing or Charity can say something. There were occasions where Alan White and James White would go on holiday. They would go away on holiday, and they would be criticized. Why are you wasting God's money going on holiday? Why aren't you putting the money into the Lord's work? And for her, it's very hurtful. So, again, each and every one of us is accountable for ourselves, to God, in how that money is spent. And if going on a holiday, if going for a meal, or for special occasion, does much needed rest or brings joy and happiness, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, for myself anyway. Okay, go on, see your hand up. I have to be careful now. Is it blessing or is it charity?
It's charity.
All right, good. Okay.
Okay. I'm just giving it another try. I just want to explain to you why this question came into my mind.
Okay.
First of all, it's like when we've lived a life where we have had this idea, especially as Christians, that certain people are blessed and they have certain amounts of money, or their jobs, or whatever they have, and I don't have it. And then you can start to feel like God, favors certain people than other people, right? So it's coming from this idea that, God is the one that gives to everyone. And how that's understood is that I have to pray to God or do something that, that will make God give me a certain amount of money, right? And then most of the times it's misplaced with the effort that we are supposed to put in working for money or for things, right? So I think for me, it's coming from that perspective as well. That okay, when Asha is still young, he's still dependent on you and Emma, and everything that he gets is coming from you. But he'll get to a point where he has acquired enough skill to be able to work for himself and earn, right? And once he's independent and he can do all of those things, are you still the owner, or are you still the one giving him the money that he's earning or that he has? And does he have an obligation to come back and give you money, or do you still have control over what he's doing? or the money he's getting and how he's supposed to spend it and all, right? So I think those are some of the dilemmas that are coming into my head just to try and understand, okay, so if we have those ideas correct, then it's probably going to help us to know, okay, how do we navigate life in connection with finances, the effort that we're supposed to put, and what is God actually saying to us? Are they always looking down on us and saying, okay, what did you spend that penny on? How did you spend it? And, always wanting to intervene in our lives over how we are spending the money or what we are doing with it. And so that even as we live as human beings, you don't want to live with that feeling of someone who's overbearing or who is pressing down on you, always, looking at every penny that you are using and how you are using it. And you just don't feel free, independent, and you're not able to actually pursue the things that you want, right? Because of the ideas that we've always had as Christians. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to understand. Without that understanding that we had, that is it the same or should we understand it different?
It's a lot. This last paragraph is difficult, right? Because it looks like, um, it looks like every penny I spend, I have to give an account to it. And that is very black and white, quite harsh. But when you balance it with everything else, I don't think it's quite. I don't think God is quite that overbearing. If I go out and I buy a plant burger from McDonald's, plant burger, yeah, the vegan one, right? Um, Not that I necessarily go and buy those things all the time, but for the most part, when I'm traveling, and I was talking to someone about this the other day, because I always stand by it. For the most part, when I'm traveling and I'm on the road, and yeah, I stop at a service station or something, and I can get a plant burger from McDonald's for £9, £8, £9, or I can buy a loaf of bread and some hummus, and even if I fancy some cucumbers, I make my own sandwich, on the road for £2.50. It's a lot cheaper. And for me, I'm quite happy to do that, to spend £2.50 rather than £9, um, on something which is probably going to be healthier. That's not to say I never wouldn't get a plant burger from McDonald's, and sometimes I'll take the boys and I'll do that. So it's kind of a treat. But I think that the model between a parent and a child is can only go so far between the model of God and us as the Godhead as our parent. Because I think as God as a parent is a lot more generous, a lot more forgiving, a lot more merciful, a lot more understanding, um, than a parent is to their child. It's only a fraction, of that. It might be easier to put it this way. 90% of everything you have or given, okay, is for you to decide, all right, with your God-given abilities, to how you're going to manage that, all right. And the 10% is God's, and that's kind of how I operate, rather than think about every single penny, when I'm spending. Now, if I've misappropriated funds, or if I've made a bad decision, I do feel guilty about it. I think, that was a waste, or um, I could have done better. And it's all part of our learning experience and our growth. I think really your dilemma and your questions may be one that you're going to have to work out for yourself, um, to kind of wrestle with how it works for you. I don't think any of us can actually deal with that for you, Charity, to be honest. Um, you've got some people just are guilty all the time. Some people are just sensitive in terms of what happens with the money, and they live in fear, they live in guilt, and I don't think that's how God wants us to live. He wants us to be happy, and if it means getting a gift for each other or going out to eat, once in a while. I don't believe that's any harm to do that. But I think it's really something for each and every one of us to kind of work out. I mean, for me personally, when I go shopping, um, if I've said this before, if I need to go buy a pair of shoes, I'll ask God, can you just help me direct me to a good shop? I can get a good price, because I want to just do the best with the money that I have.
Can I just make a point when you finished, Elder?
Yeah. Nyasha, you got your hand up.
Oops.
Yes. Hi, Manjit.
Hi, missed you
Happy
too.
Sabbath, everyone.
Not seen you for a long time.
I'll be here hiding.
Good, good.
Yeah. Okay. So, what I think about money is that there's a parable that is said like God makes rain to reign over good people and bad people. So everyone gets to have maybe means to get money, right? So whether you are good or you are bad, that's why we see that maybe those people that we might be considering as bad people, they actually have means better than us. They actually have money more than us. So I think in terms of getting the means to get money, God makes sure that he gives to everyone. The rain goes to a witch's farm and also an Adventist's farm. So it depends with how you're going to use the rain that God would have made it to rain upon everyone. So then what happens, what I think is that when you get the money is yours. God has blessed you with the money is yours. And when God says he wants 10% from us, it's not about God wanting the money from me, but it's about the relationship. God wants a relationship with us. It's not about the money. Like, how are you going to use the money? Are you going to spend chocolates on your children? Or are you going to buy a Tommy Hilfiger expensive shoe? I don't think it's about that. I think it's more of a relationship with God. And if you see the description that we get from how the heaven is, heaven seems to be a luxurious place. It has got everything gold. Gold is expensive and everything is just flamboyant. So I don't think if I spoil myself with something that is expensive, super expensive, I don't think God minds. Actually, I think God likes it. That's my view. I don't know if my view is correct, but that's how I have viewed God. God is not someone who will be watching you in the shop. What are you buying? Watching you when you're buying online. What is it that you're going to spend that penny on? But it's about a relationship. And when he also talks about the 25%, is it one quarter? I think it's the one that goes to the poor. Is it one quarter? Yeah, I think it's 25%. If we
I think
read in
it's
the
I
Old
think it's like
Testament,
5%. I think 5% is for the poor, I think.
5%. Yeah,
I
the
think so.
5%. Yeah. So I think when you receive the money and the information that we have, we should make sure that we make it into good use. You don't uh, you don't spend it for your own good only. But when you're giving, it's not like you are giving so that you please God. You are giving because you want to have a character perfection. When you give, you are what can I say? You are being selfless. You are considering another person, and it helps your character, and it doesn't help God in any way. That's how I've understood it.
Okay, thank you. Deb,
Yeah,
Deborah.
I like what Nisha said. I do think it's to do with selfless, because that's what righteousness is all about, being selfless. I want to look at another spectrum, and I want to talk about why is God talking about money so much? Why is it important? And I'm going to look at this other spectrum, and I'm thinking, well, when you look in the world today, and we see how other people in the world use money today, it is a very selfish world that we live in, but also it's and with Elder Manjit saying that we've got to spend within our means. If we see a majority of the people today, what are they in? They're in debt. A lot of the people that we see in the world today are in debt. And I used to look a lot. I used to look at these little, sort of YouTube things and why people are in debt, and it's mainly because they spend beyond their means, because they are I don't know, influenced or attracted to how people look. They want to look a certain way. They want to appear as if they've got money and be accepted in a certain group of society, whatever it is. A lot of people today are in debt, and it could be houses. It could be the fact that they've been told. They look at their wages and they've been told, oh yes, you can afford a £250,000 house. Instead of going beyond that, under that, and thinking, well, all right, I might be able to afford a £250,000 house, but I've got bills to pay. I've got a car loan. People don't think that. They want to go ahead and have this big £250,000 house and think, wow, And I think a lot of people get themselves into debt. And I mean, I used to work for a legal firm where there was a lady there who was I think she was about 40, 50,000 in debt. And I thought, gosh, this has got to be a lawyer or somebody like that. But it wasn't. It was somebody like myself who was just a secretary. And she'd overspent, and she had about 16 credit cards, and she was borrowing from buying from Peter to pay Paul, and wanted all these items in her home. And when you looked at the items, they were Italian leather sofas, all these type of things that she had in her home. And basically, to cut a long story short, she spent beyond her means, got herself into debt, which a lot of people, majority of people, are in today because of that, and because they're not looking or managing their finances properly or correctly. And I think God does give us a message with that as well. So that's what something. I'm not going to go on too long about it. I could go on and talk a bit more, but
No,
basically,
no,
yeah. But
yeah,
basically, she had
yeah,
to, declare herself bankrupt. So I think God is teaching us as well in the use of money, not just how we spend, but to make sure that we use it wisely, so we don't get ourselves into debt.
yeah. And money is a test in many ways, because money is a test of our selfishness, of our greed. Um, and I think the point about the tithe is it's a reminder that actually God has, given us this wealth, given us this money, and it's a reminder, are you going to give that 10% back, to remind yourself that um, it's not all yours. But yeah, I think the point about invest, I think God does invest in us. He is an investor. He's a stakeholder. He's a stakeholder in us, and it's the same as a parent is to the child. We're stakeholders in them, and we want the best for them. Yeah, I see the hand up. Blessing or charity.
I don't even know what to say anymore because a lot has already been said. Maybe picking up on the model you just gave, God as an investor or stakeholder. The way I understand investors and I'm very bad at finance, by the way, so I confess my ignorance and you can correct. But my understanding of stakeholders is, or shareholders or investors, is that they are injecting capital, whatever money, resources they have, because they expect something back. They actually see that this business venture, this enterprise is going to yield returns from, and the returns are often quantified in monetary terms. I'm going to get $1 million profit or 10 million. Am I right in that? The model itself, before getting into what I want to say about
Okay, so
that.
yeah, so an investor is someone who, puts their money and they want to return back. Okay. A stakeholder is a little bit wider. So an investor is a stakeholder. A stakeholder is basically someone who is affected, yeah, in any capacity by the person or the organization that they're working with. Okay, be it investors, suppliers, customers, agencies, or employees, all of those things. So stakeholder is a little bit wider.
Okay.
And that's why it's called stake. They've got a stake in that organization. But yeah, in the correct sense, an investor invests because they want a return on their investment.
Mhm.
And I think God is the same. God is investing in us and he wants a return on his investment. The question
So
we
what-
need to yeah, go on.
Okay, so I'll ask my question then.
Okay,
That
go on.
what is God investing,
Yeah.
and what's the return that God is expecting? Because if God is an investor, I'm not denying that God isn't an investor, but I'm
Okay.
saying it can't be money because God doesn't need money.
It doesn't need yours or my money, no.
Mm.
Right. Okay. So question one, what's he investing? All right. So I think that's pretty straightforward. He's invested in us with life, yeah, and whatever wealth we have. And then the second question is, well, what does he want in return? So I'm going to open up to everyone. So what is it that God wants from us in return for giving us life and wealth?
Companionship.
Companionship, yeah. I think relationship probably encompasses everything. Yeah, okay, relationship. But okay, carry on.
No, I was just thinking, because God doesn't need money, right?
Yeah.
And whatever money that we have, really, it's for taking care of us and making sure that we are happy, we get all the needs that we have
Okay.
in order to be able to have that relationship with God. Because I am thinking that God created human beings in the first place anyway because they wanted a companion. So whatever else that God provided or created is to make sure that we are comfortable in order to be able to, live our lives. But what they're having in return for me is companionship, not
Okay.
money.
I'm gonna put a different perspective on this, because if God gives us money, resources, and blessings so that he can get companionship back from us, that's almost buying love, right? And I don't think God buys our love, or I don't think it's good to buy love or force love. Okay, I have this discussion with mostly Zadok, like you can't force love, Dad, or you can't kind of buy love, and you can't. Love has to be free flowing. So there's another type of stakeholder, okay, that's not quite the investor title, all right, but I will bring this thought up as a philanthropist. So maybe we should think of God as a philanthropist in terms of, yeah, he invests in us without expecting a return or monetary return. In other words, it's charity. God invests in us as charity. That's his other perspective. And
Yeah.
therefore God does not want anything back from us monetary wise, but a philanthropist will give money to something because he's expecting that money is going to be used for a particular purpose or for particular benefit, to humankind. So that's just another kind of.
I think I like that answer.
Yeah, me too.
That helps me a lot.
The investor part, yeah.
The philanthropist part.
Philanthropist. There we go. Primrose.
Okay. So yeah. So my thoughts were coming from what each and everyone was saying, and now when it's your time to speak, you kind of like say, "Oh, where do I start from?" So, I like the concept of we give in order to show our love. Um, so God, they showed us love by being the first giver, you know. And when we are asked to give back in return, it's just a measure of our love, you know. Whether you are giving, whichever model you want to use, parent, child, you give because you love them. Husband, spouse, you give because you love them. Friend, you give because you love them. So giving is because of, it's an expression of how you love, you know, someone. It might not totally be, oh, I gave you 30 pounds, so I love you, 30 pounds, value of 30 pounds. But I mean, you give what you can. Whether you don't put a value to say, oh, this was this amount, but what counts is the thought. And then I also wanted to mention about, Nyasha mentioned that I don't think God will be angry with me if I'm looking good and happy. I also don't think God would be angry with that. Um, with you looking good and being happy and enjoying. I think um, it's just like when if you take a parent-child model, if you get new shoes for your child, they're going to be happy. They're going to look good in them. They'll even sometimes say, "Oh, I want to go with them to school," even when you know that these shoes were not meant for school, but they just want to put them on irregardless. So I think um, God is not there to micromanage, you know, w- how we look, what we eat, you know, like how I'm going to use this money to buy a pair of socks, and you know, is God going to be happy with me wearing a white pair of socks or a black one, because the black one, you know, for those reasons, no. But I think God is happy when we are happy as well, and when we make other people happy as well. So my last contribution was on God is a multiplier. So when if you look in Genesis, uh everything was told to go and multiply. It's not about children here, please get me correctly. So, my point is not on, oh, go and have many children. No, no. So the principle is when God gives you something, He wants you to multiply it. So He gives you life, live that life abundantly. You know, multiply that life. You know, if God gives you wealth and resources, have a knowledge of how to multiply and grow. I think there's a principle of growth. Um, that comes with God's blessings. And this is illustrated in the parable of those stewards or servants that were given talents. So one says, okay, you gave me you gave me 5 talents. You gave me 1 talent. I'm just going to dig up a hole and, you know, put it there. I'm not going to make an effort to expand it or what. You're a ruthless God. You didn't go to work. I went to shift. I'm putting it in our day. I'm the one that's waking up every morning, and it's cold. The road is icy. I'm going to shift, and you want me to give you back. I'm just going to, you know, I'm just going to take that talent and put it there, and I'll give back what's due to you, you know. And then there is others that are given more, and then they say, oh, look, you gave me 2 and now I've got 4, you know. I multiplied this. So I think if we understand the concept of God has given us money to multiply it, for what purpose? Because you know that talent, that parable of talents just ends on, oh, they multiplied. And I think that's a principle that God established from the start, that he tells he tells the apple tree to multiply, and it produces. So in our situation, God has given us, and if we gather the knowledge of how to multiply these means, and then what next? So I think the principle of giving and multiplication is important, but I think I'm getting lost now in my thoughts. So bye.
This is a very difficult topic. Okay, it's a very difficult topic, and when we surface read, sometimes we don't really reflect on what does it mean to be extravagant. What does it mean to be steward? What does it mean? Angels record us, and I think it's good we're having this discussion, because it's challenging me. It's making me think. Well, actually, what does that mean? What is it saying? So again, if we come back to the principle, we live within our means. I think that's important, but also coming back to a little bit, well, as a if we take the philanthropy model, or even an investor model that God puts into us, what does He want back? Or what does God want back? The Godhead want back? And the Bible says that God first loved us. That's why we can, love them back. Uh, I don't believe God's in the business of buying our love or buying our affection. He demonstrates His love to us unconditionally, and it's that love that attracts us, not all the money and the blessings that He gives us. And I think this is the issue when Jesus fed the multitude. They like the idea of a Christ that takes care of all their needs, feeds them, and that's why they wanted, to follow Jesus, because He's going to give us bread and fish every day, and that really wasn't the point. So I believe, in true philanthropy, philanthropy is give, so that you give back. And I actually like the word, the multiply, because the idea in the philanthropist, it gives those resources and funds so that it can be multiplied, in the right hands, and that's the purpose. Okay, I'm not sure how much time we got left. So if you give me,
it's 11:48, so it's got until 12.
I've got to talk. So okay,
Yeah.
we've got 8 minutes then. Okay, so living within our means is a good thing. So it gives a lot of peace. Yeah, it does. I find when it comes, to finance, and my most stressful moments is because I got myself into, a tricky situation, or got myself into debt. When you are debt free, honestly, it reduces the gray hairs on your head. It really, really does. Okay, I see the hand up. I won't say ask who it is, but I see the hand up.
It's blessing.
Okay, blessing.
It's Charity who typed out in the chat.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so I decided to just do a quick dictionary search of the word steward, because
Yes.
I steward is like a work. Just decided to read what the dictionary says. So
Okay.
it says one employed in a large household or estate to manage domestic concerns, such as the supervision of servants, collection of rents, and keeping of accounts. Another one is one appointed to supervise the provision and distribution of food and drink in an institution. One who actively directs affairs management, etc. So I think Andreas is the one that mentioned the employer-employee model, and I had questions for him, but I didn't ask him. But it seems that's the model that Ellen White is using in the above passages that we were reading. So it just made me question that, okay, if we are hired by God, we are employed by God, in what context are we employed by God? Because is it our everyday life, that we're basically managing the funds of a company, of a business, or it's in a specific context in which we are hired by God? Because if it's in everything, then it means we can't do anything. If you get what I'm saying, like I actually can't if a company makes me manager and I manage its accounts, I can't draw money from the company's accounts to go and buy myself lunch or to give myself a new phone, etc. I can't do that. So, in what context are we God's employees? Stewards.
Oh, okay. So it's like a recruitment agency then, I guess. You're a temp. You're doing temping. So God, go ahead.
So like that's what I think it's the tension, because like I think there's two models that maybe, like this model is the one that Ellen White's giving us is that one, and then there's the other model of the gift of God giving us gifts, so we own that, and I think they're in contradiction in a way. So like, how do we handle those two? Because is one of them wrong? Are they both correct? Or how do they coexist? Because like, if we think about them like literally, you can't be both a steward and receiving a gift in that sense, I think, because the steward doesn't own those things. So yeah.
Okay, but
Maybe it's because
steward,
they're paid a salary. I don't know.
no, I was going to say the steward is always paid a salary, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or they're given something. So even all models in that sense can be worked in harmony, because stewards, unless you're a slave, and even the slave gets their food and water and shelter, so they're still getting something for even for slave labor, they're still getting something. So in the secular world, a steward would be, I mean, if you think about it, at one point Joseph was a steward of Potiphar's household. He ran the affairs of the house. So stewards are paid something. So even that salary or whatever they receive, that is the gift, I guess. That is the wealth that they're generating.
So how do we know how much is our salary and how much is for the?
Well, how much your salary is, and how much the business that you're doing, and you're gonna figure out then that, okay, if God is temping me out to in my employment, then I'm getting my wages, which is then the gift from God. And then it's kind of models within models, in the sense that God is lending you out to employers so that you can earn an income. So God is enabling you to receive that income from the labor you do, but you wouldn't have got that, couldn't have got that without God's hand.
But as a steward, if I get paid, that money is mine now. It's not the company's money. Because there's company money that I can't touch. But the one that's given to me as a salary is mine.
Yes.
I do what I want with it.
The company can ask you, what did you do with your money?
Yes, but you should know better to know that God is always a bundle of contradictions in the way he does models with us.
Imagine now.
So we work it out. God has given us insight. We work it out, and he gives us gifts, but he's making us a steward. So he said, okay, here's a gift for you, right? But okay, let's just say it how it is. That gift comes with strings attached. I think, but what? God gives us gifts. Go on.
You used the model of philanthropy. Yes. And you said with that model, the philanthropist is not expecting anything in return. So there's no strings attached. Yes. So I guess that's where the dichotomy is, that you have this model of the philanthropy as God. Yes. And then you have you being a steward of God's, company or household or whatever. And how do we juggle the two? When do we know which model is working?
Well, okay.
But
if I
Elder Manjit,
before you answer that, I think the philanthropist does expect something.
Yes, that's what I want to say.
Money. They just don't expect money, but they do expect something.
Right. yes.
Elder Manjit, yeah. I
Go
also
ahead,
want
Primrose. Go ahead.
I also want to say that, you know, if we think that the whatever that person is
Philanthropist.
is giving and does not expect accountability, then I think there's a problem, you know,
That's
because
the point. That's the
there
point.
there is accountability.
There is.
We know that there are some charity organizations that have been sued for misuse of funds, you know. In especially in this country, we know that someone makes a donation and then towards maybe cancer research or what, and then the board decides, oh, to buy scooters for everyone. They get investigated and charges are brought towards them. So, in as much as it was a donation, a charity donation, also so people will say, "Oh, why did the person donate and donate first when they are now going checking, you know, what this person is doing?" But then there is always, uh, I think, there's always
Accountability.
accountability.
Yeah.
There's always accountability.
And
Yeah.
that's where you get in your models within models, because even the philanthropists, like I was going to say, they give to the charitable cause, and that's why charitable causes always have to give reports, of this is what we've spent that money on. So it's accountability, stewardship. But those workers, they still get their salaries or scooters. I was going to say scooters, probably not bad. Rolls Royces or BMWs. That's probably more.
That's the
more,
thing. The
more
salary, philanthropist has no power over it.
No, they do have it. No, they do have a power because they can stop giving, right? So they can stop
No,
giving
no,
the
no. But if
philanthropists.
they get the money
But
and they go with it,
once I have it, you can't take it back. You can refuse to pay me next month and say I'll fire
Sure,
you.
sure.
But for all the months up to now, there's nothing you can do once you give me the money. It's mine.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. But also remember that philanthropists talk to other philanthropists, and they could basically bring you down, to closure. In other words, you know, I also want to bring this point out as well, that God has many hats. Okay, God is not just in the box. We like to put God in a box. He's the philanthropist, or he's the investor, or he's the master. God is many things, in many moments, at any time, and God can choose which hat He wants to wear. In fact, there's a business model, called Six Thinking Hats, and the idea of the Six Thinking Hats is when you come to a problem, you look at it from different perspectives to get the best solution to the problem. And so we can't just box God, as one model. So is he the employer? So is God the employer? Is God the philanthropist? Is God the investor? He's God is all of those things. And we harmonize that, and we say, okay, we harmonize it. I've got my salary. Um, how am I best going to use that salary? Where's that salary going to be portioned? Some for camp meetings, some for treats, some for gifts, some for holidays, um, some for the work of God. They're, that's how it is. So try not to box God in one set. I think God is in different sets at any one time.
Elder
So I don't know if
Manjit.
that helps. Go
I
ahead.
think I agree with you, the man. But the issue that I was asking is those different hats all have respective context. So when God is investor, what's the context? When God is a philanthropist, what's the context? When God is a
Okay,
parent, what's the context?
sure.
Because it then means that our money is also looked at from different perspectives and contexts.
we know better
A
how
context
to use
in which money belongs to God, a context in which it doesn't. I think that's the question that I had. That it can't be all one thing, that regardless of the hat that God wears, all the money you have is not yours, and you just have to use it for God. So God has different hats, but my money doesn't change, and my position to God doesn't change. That's the bit I'm questioning.
But how you relate to the money, I think can change. In other words, and I think Brian brought this up, at the beginning, is if if okay, if I earn £1,000 a month and I put £1,000 a month, all of it into church work and movement, I don't believe that's what God expects of us, because, well, what about your living quarters? What about the food? And if you've got family, what about clothes, all those things? God expects us to take care of all those things. What you know, James White, he once said, right, that when he gets his salary, so he'd get his salary for the week, and he'd portion that salary. He'd say like, um, you know, 2 days for church, yeah, and then it'll be like, one day to help the poor, uh, 1 day to feed the family, yeah, and 1 day to for us to do what we want to. So he'd portion up his salary like that, in weekdays, because he'd get paid weekly, and I believe that's how kind of God operates with us. He operates with all the hats all at one time. Only God can do that. And I
I
think
think,
I,
yeah,
I
yeah.
I'm gonna say this as well. Um, I think don't get too hung up about it as well, because you're going to be miserable. In other words, we've got our money. Are we doing the best use of our money? God expects us, you know, to make good use of our money, to invest it in the right places, and if we can buy our own properties, um, buy our own land, all of those things, is a good thing, not a bad thing. But let's not be miserable about our money. Let's be joyful about our money. Go on, I'll cut you up there. Carry on.
Yeah, I guess you're basically touching on some of the things that I was saying. I was trying to bring out that for us as Christians, it's something that we might have not realized, but we have kind of had some we've had a really bad relationship with money because of our religion and how we see God. So that has affected us even when we buy things for ourselves. Because I remember at some point I used to feel bad to buy something for myself because I felt someone else needed it more. I mean, maybe I should give this more to the church or whatever. And then you always have that feeling that you're doing the wrong thing. And it's coming from that perspective where we have these ideas about who God is, and everything belongs to God. We are supposed to be uh you know gi- living the lives of a Christian. And to you, what a Christian means is being selfless. And what is selflessness? You can't always be gratifying your appetites and your passions and things like that. So I think it's important to understand what it means so that we can translate that to our lives. Because for many years, I'm telling you, it's something that I'm still learning. I've had a miserable experience concerning money, because you're always thinking, am I doing the right thing? Even if I buy myself something, something that is important, like an iPad, you're going to feel bad. You're like, that's a lot of money. Should I even be buying that for myself? But if I buy it for someone else, I feel okay because I'm doing it for someone else. If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I understand, and yeah, it's a challenge for each and every one of us, that when we do spend the money, um, you know, is is God happy? Is God pleased? Um, and I don't think there's a straightforward answer to that, to be honest.
Elder Manjit,
Go ahead.
to me, so what I think I'm learning is that in a sense there's a straightforward answer in regards to the models. Then how we apply them might be difficult, but like the way I'm seeing the models is you have the model of philanthropy equals stewardships, whatever, all of this that Ellen White is bringing up, being an employer employee. And so you're given a lot of money, like let's say employer employee, so you're given a lot of money to run a campaign on something, and you have to use all that money to run a campaign on that, and for that purpose you can't use it for yourself. But because of working there, you're paid you're given extra money, which is your salary. So with that money, you can do whatever you want. It's for you. Like you actually own that. You don't own the other part that the company gave you for the other purpose. So in that sense, I think the models fit and they can coexist. Then in practice, how do we know, from like our literal salaries, how much is it, you know, how much was it given us for a purpose as an employee, and how much it's our actual salary, then I don't know. But we would have to discuss that. But I don't know if you see it that way as well, like the models and how everyone sees it.
All the models can harmonize, okay, and at different levels of perspective. For example, okay, I go out to work and I earn a salary. I do extra education, I get a better job, and get a better job, get a better job, get a higher salary. So on one level, I've earned that money. Yeah, it's my money. I've earned it. Okay. But on another level, I believe what God is saying is, well, you know what? You couldn't have got that job without me. Um, I enabled you the strength and energy to get that job. I've blessed you in many avenues and ways to get that job. So, whereas the worldling would say, "Well, I got the job on my own merit." So if I talk to a relative, they said, "Well, God had nothing to do with this job that I've got. God's got nothing to do with the salary I have. God's got nothing to do with the promotion I've got." Whereas for the Christian, we say, "Well, God blessed us with that promotion. God blessed us with this job. God blessed us with the providence of these things." And I believe it's on that level that God is saying is just remember that I'm behind you. I'm the one pulling those invisible strings to get you to where you're at. Or and really it's a recognition on our part that we're here because because of God. But the world then doesn't give any acknowledgement to God, and they all get good salaries, they all get good jobs. So I think it's a perspective of where the blessings are coming from, because the world then will say our blessings come from our own work and our own labor, whereas the Christians say, well, our blessings and reward is coming because we serve a living God. So the models do harmonize, but they're not as fixed and hard fast, if that makes sense. Because how did I get the job? Yeah, I give credit that God enabled me to get the job. How did I get my degree, or multiple degrees, as some of us may have? God gave me the strength, to do that. So again, when we look at all the different models, the philanthropy, the gifts, and the investments, God doesn't just God does. If I dig up my garden and I found £1 million, yeah, that's a gift from God. Okay, but that's very, very rare and far and few between that those experiences happen. All of our money, all of our wealth, all of our uh, things that we have and accumulate is actually from the labor, that we do, or the labor our parents did, and maybe through inheritance. So it's not that. So when we say God gifts this to us, it didn't come on the plate. It came through hard graft, hard labor. So all the models are there, but we have to put them all in their proper context. Uh, Deborah, you got the Bible text. Just give a quick summary of what they're saying, what they're about in Mark and Luke.
I think what came to mind was when Christ was talking about the widow's mite.
Yes.
And I think basically she was poor, and there was the rich. You were talking about, the people who were wealthy, and even though they gave abundantly, what mattered to the Lord was this widow who came and just gave a couple of mites, which was probably, next to nothing, but that's all she could afford. But basically, the Lord looked generously on this widow, and basically, it wasn't how much He didn't look as how much she gave. It was the motive, the fact that she gave all she had, and even though she didn't, she probably needed that money, yet she gave it generously to the cause. And mainly it was I don't know. I suppose the Lord looked at that, at the fact that she gave all that she had. I think it was that she gave all that she had. And
Yeah.
it wasn't of an abundance that she had. She gave all that she had. It was important for her enough to give. But what I'm saying is, we can still give generously, but it's giving of our hearts, giving of our. I suppose it's the act behind it, I suppose, and the fact that she gave all she had because she couldn't afford to give that,
Yeah.
obviously. You know what I mean? But she gave all that she had, and that was looked favourably by God, by Jesus. That was my point, basically.
Yeah. Primrose, I see your hand. Again, coming back to the point, as a Christian, we give our 10%, we give our uh our tithe in recognition that everything we have is from God. But whereas my son, if he gets a gift from his grandparents, I say, you should tithe that, because, well, why should I tithe that? What's God got to do with that? I'm not tithing that. And then that's the choice of the world, or the unbelievers, where we've got this money, we've earned this money, we've got right to this money, and we're going to do with what as we please. So I think all the models work together. You're just going to put them in the right context and work with God in all of these different hats. Primrose.
So I wanted to say that the difference between us and the worldling is gratitude. So taking us back to a presentation on prayer by Elder Paminda, it was a discussion, but the last part of that presentation, if we all remember, Elder Paminda mentions that what most parents just want is a thank you, for, oh, you got me this, thank you, showing gratitude, you know. Um, and I mentioned it before that God gave because God loved, That's the principle we get. Because God loved us, God gave us, And you give to show your love as an expression of love. And the example that Debbie mentioned of that lady, her gift was the smallest of all gifts, but she did it out of love, gratitude, you know. So I think the major principle we should get about us being stewards, because we can be hard and fast on ourselves and think God is a tyranny that's looking to say, I want your money, I want your money, I want your money. I don't think it's not like that. But God is teaching us the principle of love and giving. So if let's say I buy candy for Nicholas, a packet of jelly babies, I give it all to him, and I ask him, can I please have one or two? Sometimes, if Nicholas is in a good mood, you say, no, I don't want, If he's in a good mood, you say, oh, thank you, mommy. There you go. Have one or two, But then, and I'm happy. Not that I really wanted the candy, but I'm just happy that, okay, I gave him this whole packet and Nicholas can give me if I ask back. But there are times when you buy him and you say, can I please have it? He says, no, no, no. And I even start rebuking, why are you greedy? Why are you not sharing with me? This is mine, it's mine, it's mine. And what I'm just trying to show Nicholas is there's more joy in sharing. There's more happiness in giving as well, So God gives us so that we also give the needy, so that we also help out, you know. And to be fair, it doesn't benefit God when you give, it benefits you. You are the one that feels great after helping a widow or paying fees for a child that has lost their parents, both parents. And you say, okay, this month I'll pay your school fees, don't worry. Try it and see that the tingle, like Elder Manjit says, it's you who feels the tingling, you know. Um, it's you who feels the blessing, it's you who has peace of mind, it's you who feels happier, So I know Ellen White experienced situations with James White being depressed and all. And she ended up sending him out to go and help other people do work. And, so there's something that comes with you getting healing, getting joy by doing service for other people. So I think the principle of giving back to God You're not taking it. No one knows the way to heaven and say, oh God, this is your money, take it. But you are going to give the next needy person. You're going to give to the next organization or whatever you are going to give. And it goes a long way. And God is trying to help us to see the principle God established, that you love, you give. You love, you give. You love, you give. It's not a hard and fast rule to say, oh, so what's left for me? What am I going to give? So how am I going to balance this? I mean, and God is leaving that for us to manage our finances, but at the same time, give to God. That's what I think.
Yeah, when it comes to finances, we need to be conservative and liberal at the same time. Um, Otherwise, we're going to end up being like Judas, tight-fisted, miserable, stingy, and in the end, deceitful, and a fraud. So I think it's important just to have this balance. Yeah, some things, do I need to buy this? Do I really need it? Um, and then to the other end, you know what, be a little bit more liberal. You know what, it's a birthday, or it's a special occasion. Let's go out, or let's celebrate something. So it's if you keep those two things together, I think then it brings kind of a balance. So I know we've got this kind of, we're still struggling with this dichotomy, but I think it's healthy if we balance it with the liberal side of what God is trying to teach us. Um, you know, once in a while, I'll go out, I'll take the boys, we're somewhere, and they wanna a plant burger, I'll get it for them, and I might even get one myself, with that. So, but that's not all the time. I don't feel guilty, I don't feel bad about it, because it's also creating memories, for those children. Because sometimes, um, my boys might think I'm stingy, or might think I'm a bit tight. And I don't want them, growing up thinking, oh, when I was growing up, my dad was tight or stingy, have all these bad impressions. Because when I look back at my parents, they were, my dad was never like that. My dad was never stingy. But then I think sometimes my dad might be a bit more indulgent, than I would. So it's keeping these dichotomies, keeping these contradictions, I think actually is healthy, because it brings balance then to the way we see life and the way we use our money, rather than fight against it. But I think all of us, Charity, you brought up, where how we've all had hang-ups with money, we've all had hang-ups with guilt, we've all had hang-ups with what does it mean to be a good steward. And I think many of these things is personal for us. But in this thing where it says, let every man of you lay by him in store, as God hath prospered them, prospered them. In other words, it's coming back to within our means. If I'm a millionaire, God would expect me to give more to the cause than if I was a poor person. That's really what it is. Okay, I'm pretty sure my time is over.
Yeah, yes.
I think well over. So let's park it there. So to be continued. All right. I'll ask Elder Emma so she can give me a few more slots, and then we'll continue this. But I'm not saying I have all the answers, but together, by exploring, by engaging and conversing, it helps to pave out ways and help us to overcome some of the hang-ups we may have, or just to see things from a different perspective. So I hope that I've definitely enjoyed today. Giving me some things to think about, some food for thought, and I hope it has for yourselves. But overall, please, we're supposed to enjoy life abundantly, not be miserable. So remember, money's just a tool. It's not the be all and end all. So thank you for your participation. it is Sabbath school, so we are supposed to engage, and through engagement we grow and strengthen one another. I get tingling at the same time, Primrose, tingling. Let's pray. Dear Lord, we thank you so much for this time that we've had with each other, trying to understand you better, understanding what you require of us. What is your relationship to us? What is our relationship to you? How are we supposed to appreciate all the blessings and gifts that you give us? Yet at the same time, we are supposed to be stewards. Please bless us. Please help us in our daily walk with you, our daily struggles. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.